Welcome to the next episode in our Trends in AI interview series. And today I have the honor to welcome Michael Kolk to our show. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Jacob. Pleasure to be here.
So, while 2024 was really an amazing year for progress in AI, many people have forecast that 2025 is really the year of delivering real value to companies. And in that light, we're going to be diving into a conversation on the role of AI in R&D and engineering, innovation, and many other topics. So let me first introduce our guest, Michael Kolk. He is a managing partner at the Arthur D. Little Management Consultancy, where he leads the global innovation practice. He has a research background um, uh, with a PhD in biophysical chemistry from Radboud University. Um, and he has worked as a work group leader as Shell Chemicals before joining Arthur D. Little. Um, so the reason that we wanted to have you on our show is your recent report that you published called Moving Innovation Forward. So this is a report on how AI can be harnessed to transform development and engineering that you co-authored with Phil Webster and Martin Glauman, and together with the Netherlands Academy of Engineering, the Royal Swedish Academy of Engineering, and the Dutch Royal Institute of Engineers. So this is a really nice piece of impact analysis on where AI is today and where large enterprises globally can make it productive. So can you tell us a little bit about how you did this study and what led to it?
Yeah, thank you, Jacob. Yeah, so like I believe you yourself, when we chatted before this show, artificial intelligence is not just fascinating, but also highly relevant, interesting. But you need to take a certain perspective. And my perspective as global innovation practice leader, I've been working in innovation, including R&D, engineering, let's say applying human ingenuity in general. And if you apply that world, if you overlay that with the world of the, let's say, the promise of AI, or vice versa, you put AI on that top, what do you see? And I intuitively felt years ago already that there is a lot of potential there. So that was one reason to start thinking about this. And the other reason to do that is that I also see, also discussing with clients, the enormous challenges that are coming people's way. And we'll talk more about that maybe a little bit later, in, for instance, complexity in many ways. So even if there were no AI, we really need to talk about complexity and what that means for innovation, both in terms of a threat, but also in terms of an opportunity. So those two things come together, and certainly, of course, with the rise of generative AI, everybody suddenly started speaking about it. Our clients started to speaking about it. People who are not from the AI field traditionally started to speak about it, but suddenly also facilitated having discussion. It was not something that was sounded like abracadabra. So that led from one thing to the other, and then we got in touch with these partners that you mentioned before, and we agreed to do this study together, which I think comes at the right time. So we're seeing a lot of traction in our discussions with our clients and in the market.
So let me ask you this question. If AI is the solution, what is really the problem?
Yeah. No, that's a very good question. And as we say in our company and also to our clients, it's always in life very important. You need to fall in love with the problem and not with the solution. And the problem in this case, I mentioned one is there are a couple of points. One is first and foremost complexity. So complexity means many things, but it has to do with product complexity. we also described it in the report. In almost all industries, you see gradually, and it has happened years before, a shift from you make a product and you sell it to a product that becomes more and more integrated with others. If it's hardware, it means it is connected and it has sensors, so it can connect to things. And then actually you can think about more solutions. And from solutions, you get into systems, and then from systems, you get into systems of systems. So if you talk about like smart cities, in which autonomous driving has a role, of course, and autonomous driving, you have the car and the software and the data and so on. So if you are in that space, you need to think about this in a system thinking way. And if you're in chemicals and materials, which is my background, you need to think about circularity. So you cannot just think about molecules. It becomes much more complex. But the complexity is also in supply chains and technology acquisition. Can you have access to the right technology if it becomes increasingly complex to do? Regulation is coming up, which makes it super difficult to make sure that you're compliant. So complexity is very important reason why AI is important, because AI is fundamentally well suited to approach complexity problems, not in all cases, but in many cases, much better than humans can. There are
And
also
what's the main
other.
reason for that? That AI is better suited to deal with complexity in kind of this
Yeah, well,
system level thinking way.
yeah, complexity means in many situations, it means you can do it as a human being if you have 100 years, right, available, so to speak, or if you are, even if it's not 100, even if you would have a team of 10 people. So for instance, we did a project already 5 years ago where we applied AI to say something to actually to predict development of prices in commodity chemicals, right? Can we say something better than normal regression, traditional regression methods on what the evolution of prices of commodity chemicals would be 1 month, 2 months, 3 months out? And you can do a lot with regression. You need to be more clever than typical regression, but you need to every week you need to update it. So this is something that especially when NLP comes up and now with generative AI, you can do it much faster and quicker, and nobody gets tired and lazy and so on. So there are fundamental reasons why AI is able to do help in complexity. We believe, by the way, very much in augmentation, right? It's very difficult to let the AI do everything, although that is shifting. So I believe there are fundamental reasons why AI is so well suited to be applied in development and engineering, as you introduced the subtitle of the report. And the next to complexity, there are also there's a whole list of challenges that we see across industries. And for each other one, AI is either, let's say, almost created for it, right? Ideally suits us as complexity, or at least very, very helpful. And this is actually also the way how we try to estimate the potential of AI, right? It's very difficult to ask people what will be the potential of AI in 5 years from now. But it's much more easy for people to say in their own business, what will happen if you don't address properly complexity or things like compliance and all of the other challenges. And then you can say, so which of those challenges could you conceivably address with AI? And from those two angles did we come to an estimation of the potential, for instance.
Right. So basically, you're saying AI has a incredible capacity in terms of the volume of data and the speed of analysis, but also in some sense of connecting the dots or actually
Exactly. Yeah.
creative brainstorming type of work.
Yeah. So as we describe also in the report, in R&D management, innovation management, if you deal, for instance, with competence management, which is what, for instance, an R&D boss often needs to do, you often talk about famous T-shaped model, right? So because you have more lateral skills, very important, for instance, in engineering, and your more deep specific skills. AI is the same. And AI, when I talk about AI, I'm being a little bit superficial, right? Because there are many different types of AI. So we talk about any type of AI. But if you put them all together, there are two main things that AI can do that match perfectly this T-shape. The horizontal bar corresponds to what we call knowledge integration, which means read everything, talk to everyone, know everything that there is to know, and make sure that it is available to the person who needs it at the moment of truth, right? At the level of depth that you need, right? That is something that is everyone who's ever played with ChatGPT knows that this is fundamentally, it's not
Yeah.
perfect yet, but it's a fundamental property.
Which
And
is
the
a
other,
quality which is very rare in human analysts or researchers or engineers.
what's very rare?
This quality of knowing everything
It's
about it.
impossible. Yeah, it's impossible. And it's in fact, I can dig it up. I once read a report 10 years ago which tried to estimate, if the total amount of knowledge available is 100, which part of that is typically used at the moment of truth in decisions, for instance, to start a project or to stop a project, to manage a portfolio. And I think they came to 10 or 15% at most, right? If they have the most senior scientist with a very good memory and 40 years of experience, then probably you can cover 10%. Now you can cover 100%, right? There's no reason why you cannot.
Well, yeah, come much closer than
Much closer.
100%.
And
Yeah.
the other dimension is the vertical one, which we could call knowledge expansion. So here you add something, for instance, in prediction. So the famous example in R&D is AlphaFold, where you can predict protein structures. This, in my background, when I was a PhD student in my department, the idea that you can predict protein folding, it was just, I would never believe that, never ever. But now you can. So prediction.
Because maybe it's interesting for our listeners to get a bit of context there. Your PhD thesis in the end of the 1990s was actually about folding of RNA molecules,
Correct.
more
Yeah.
from a structural analysis point of view, right? But in
Yes.
the lab.
Yeah. Exactly. So the biological question was and is what's called structure-function relationship, right? So if you can understand the structure of a large molecule, then you can better understand what it does in biology, in a cell. And in my case, when a virus enters a cell, the host cell, it should not be recognized as viral RNA. It should be seen as RNA belonging to the host cell, and it does so by folding in a particular way. And colleagues of mine would do proteins exactly the same. So the idea was, if you can understand the three-dimensional structure, you can better understand and predict biological functions, and then you can go to things like rational drug design and so on, which was very fundamental at the time. Yeah.
Would you have believed at that time that something like AlphaFold, which is solving this problem purely computationally using advanced neural network architectures, would come
No,
to
no, I
pass?
would, I would, I would, would have betted everything I have, and that's dear to me, that it is impossible, right? Because the number of possibilities of folding a large protein is, I mean, is close to infinite. So this is why, certainly for me and people with that background, when AlphaFold came out, this was really an earth-shattering moment, and it opened my eyes.
So that was one of the maybe biggest breakthroughs that you recently witnessed. I'm curious also about your kind of personal experience with AI. What is the most fascinating personal discovery that you have done with large language models or other types of AI models?
Yeah, so well, let's say I'm not a data scientist myself, so I'm really come from the application, but I know pretty well how research and innovation works. Um, so I've colleagues that I work with. Example that I gave earlier, what was very fascinating was the price prediction model, which was, by the way, not. It was another large language model. It was actually before that became mainstream terminology, but it was natural language processing had a very important, it's still a functioning model. So every week it reads everything, all the trade journals in that particular area, and then it updates the predictive parameters, so to speak. And of course, but also taking lots of numericals. So 30 years of historical price data and all kinds of other trends
Right.
are included. This is quite fascinating. And we came to the conclusion that even for 6 months out, we could predict with 90% accuracy what would happen. So that was actually something that I found myself almost magical. And this was 5 years
So
ago.
in that sense, the magic is kind of this going beyond human capabilities, right? Because
Exactly.
a,
Exactly.
a, a
Yeah.
personal, a
Yeah.
single person who would be an analyst in the domain would probably not be able to predict what such.
Exactly. So that is a big difference between this horizontal, the T perimeter T-shape. Horizontal is, I mean, it can still be mind-boggling, but it's not. It's something that theoretically you could do, right, with a group of human beings. In the predictive part, it really goes beyond that. And
Hyper
this is a clear
specialized
example.
superhuman capabilities.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So let's get back to the Moving Innovation Forward
Yeah.
report. So one of the fascinating quotes from the report that I want to mention is you write that AI is proving to be a paradigm shift in how ideas are conceived, how systems are designed, and how solutions are delivered by large commercial organizations.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the path to truly harnessing AI and embedding it consistently in work processes remains unclear, and the level of maturity in terms of adoption is low. This is fascinating.
Yeah.
So, first of all, how do you see the current level of adoption of AI in development and engineering, in R&D, in sort of the technical industries in general?
Yeah. Yeah. I can be quite specific on that. So we have in our benchmark, we work together with close to 100 organizations, most of them large, very large, also some startup scale-up level, most of them large, across all, let's say, all innovation and technology intensive industry sectors. And with those 100, they each, and I want to thank them again, spent quite a bit of time with us going through this. So it was not a light survey. It was actually quite in depth. Some actually took, I know, 2 or 3 hours to complete it. And one of the things we looked at is where do you stand in applying it? And we found that around 15% only said, and we had a calibration for this. We already today believe we have establish and even optimize the way we need to apply AI, can apply AI in our core innovation process, so to speak. That's 15%, and not surprisingly, those
So
are large.
85% are not at that level yet.
Exactly. And the ones that are you can imagine are more, let's say, in high tech, let's call it digital native or close to digital native kind of companies. But even there, even large electronic firms would not consider them to be there. The majority is in what we say initial implementation or starting first piloting, right? Most of them would be initial. So they would say, we have done pilots, we're happy with it, we're implementing it, for instance, in a particular department, in a particular specific function. And then we have that around close to 50%. And then we have one quarter who says, we've passed that, and now we're in growing adoption. So we're moving from not just from pilot to pilot, but from implementation initiative to implementation initiative, but still in separate domains. So one department, another department, or one topic, in knowledge management and another one in lab automation, for instance, right? So not yet connected, so to speak. So if you would plot, let's say, adoption of AI across all industries like in an S curve, I'm quite certain we're before the inflection point, so to speak, right? It's growing clearly, but there's still most of the work to be done is ahead of us, I believe.
So you call AI a paradigm shift in how ideas are conceived, but of course companies are looking at the real monetary value, right? So what do you see as the main transformative potential of AI in development and engineering in terms of impact on the top line and bottom line?
Yeah. So here, and we also mentioned this in the report, the overriding objective, which is quite mundane but also very important, is what we call innovation productivity, which is something to do with what you get out of it and divided by what you put into it. And innovation productivity is something to be. It is not so much to do with invention, right?
So
Inventing a
I'm
new
not talking about
molecule.
the number of patents or
It can be
number
that,
of
but it's
research
really, it can be
papers.
quite, yes, it can be quite mundane. It's getting more, so more, it's generally more downstream in engineering, innovation, and getting it to market, understanding, for instance, much quicker what regulation will do, and there's a change somewhere, and that you're able to funnel that back much more quickly and even automatically and almost, let's say, real time into the front end of the development process and development cycle. And innovation productivity, we've estimated as best as we can to be around 40% across all industries by 2030. And remember, the way we did that is not to ask what do you think productivity will be doing. We said, what are the major challenges that you see and what would happen if you would not address them? What would happen then to growth, to EBIT, to overall productivity, all these things? And these are just estimates, so you need to be taken with a grain of salt. But I think this is much easier for people to answer than what is the potential of technology. So we had that number, and then we looked at, of all these challenges, which are the ones that are quite suitable to be addressed by AI and related technologies. And from that, we come to this 40%, which is an estimate. And this is enormous. And I would like to combine that also to the imperative, and we mentioned this also, the famous Draghi report, or Draghi arguing for massive.
Just give Draghi some AI, and the report will write itself.
In a way, right? No, but innovation productivity, of course, is also quintessential for Europe as a whole, and by the way, not just in Europe, and it's quintessential for all these companies that are innovation intensive in this part of the world, where it is all about added value, and the added value must come from innovation. It will not come from cheap energy. It will never. It will not come from cheap resources ever. So it needs to come from ingenuity and from applying that in innovation. So I believe that completely new inventions of new technologies are important and they will be needed, but the majority of the value is in productivity, which is a combination, I believe, of AI applied laterally. Remember the T-shape, right? In good old knowledge management, making sure that everything that you could know is available at the moment of truth, and selectively invention enabled by AI to be able to do things that you otherwise would not be able to do. But the worst thing you can do, we had said it before, is that companies fall in love with the problem. They see cool AI and they then say, what can we do with this cool AI? That is not the way we believe to get to optimal value.
So that's a huge potential, right? In terms of productivity, in terms of speed to market, in terms of competitive advantages. So 15% of companies being at that maturity level where they would like to be. What's holding the other 85% back? Can you give some examples of that?
Yeah, it's partially just time, right? People need time. We had a very interesting event last week, even where we had R&D leaders. This was in Belgium, and this question also came up. The big challenge, but it has to do with, it's a general change management issue. There's lots of potential. There are bottom-up lots of great things that can be shown and that actually deliver value. But for these types of broader, the real value comes if you what we call make sure AI is democratized. So not AI for the few specialists in a company, but AI, coming out of the water tap, so to speak, right? It's everywhere. It's applied in the way of working. And for this to happen, you cannot rely on bottom-up initiative, which then need to have an NPV, which need to compete with other projects. Right? It's a general problem. So it must come from top-down belief, right? That this is the way to go, and that AI-enabled innovation at large will become a core capability, not for everything, but for very specific. So if you are in advanced engineering and you need to work together with your suppliers and your customers in what's called concurrent engineering to work together with using the same data, sharing, for instance, data, then you being versatile in applying AI in that space is a core capability. So that means that if it's a core capability, you need top-down drive from top management to initiate that. You cannot rely on the bottom up. And what we see today, and it has been well described, is that this is one big it's not a break, right? I think it's happening quite quickly, but it just takes time for companies to realize this and to reset agendas amidst all of the other things that companies need to deal with. And
And there's a big temptation, right? Like if usually if top management hears productivity increase, they immediately think uh, cutting cost.
yeah, yeah.
That's not something that you recommend in your report, right? To view it
No,
this way.
what we believe in general for these larger transformation is often a misused word, but in this case, I mean, it's not implementation where we do a tool here, a tool there. But if you believe that this is really, at least for innovation, development, and engineering of critical importance, then this will demand investment. But what you need to try for as much as possible is self-fueled transformation. So meaning you realize results and creating visible results and also increasingly, let's say, monetary results that in a way pay for the next wave. Sometimes payment doesn't mean literally in terms of cash, but at least it opens, you move from one to the other. So you cannot start with 100 different projects at the same time, and then two years later find out that you took the wrong turn at some point. So you need to start relatively small, but with an end in mind to make sure that you place your bets where you know are the big, let's say, what we call must-win battles. You show results, and then with that, free up more energy, more enthusiasm, more top-down commitment, and yes, also money later on. And the balance between how much upfront money and how much comes later, it varies from one company to the other. Some companies, for instance, in the chemical industry that I work for a lot, are in a very challenging situation right now. So cash is just very strict. So the optimal approach there is different as compared to a high-tech company that is doing very well right now, right? So it's the balances. But in any case, it needs to be to a large extent self-propelling, but it does require this top-down. You cannot rely just on MPVs, as I said earlier.
Another problem that we see a lot in our practice is that um, the pace of the incredible rapid pace of innovation in AI itself is actually an obstacle. So people imagine process change around the technology as it is today and maybe have some reservations or misconceptions, hallucinations, doesn't
Yeah.
understand my domain of expertise, prone to make mistakes. So, whereas the technology is progressing very rapidly, and you should, in my view, be planning with the technology that we'll have in 3 to 6 months or 12 months from now, and not with the technology that you played around with when you first had ChatGPT 2 years ago.
No, indeed, indeed. No, I very much agree with that. And there is a book that you may also have read, which is called Co-Intelligence, which is AI in white collar work. And it starts somewhere in the sentence, the AI you use today is the worst you will ever use, right? It's the same concept. And in fact, the report that we're doing we call it a benchmark, but we're not benchmarking best practice, we're benchmarking next practice, right? We talk about the potential. So exactly this point. So the worst thing that can happen is that people try out something, and we have many people. Now you try out something with ChatGPT 3.5, when it was there, you got disappointed, and some people actually dismiss it, right? Gone, right? Or dismiss it and there are good reasons also to be frustrated or even concerned. The approach that we took also in the benchmark of the analysis, and we also described it in the report, and I said it before, you need to avoid falling in love with the solution. So if the solution is for your problem is not AI, but some type of advanced analytics or relatively simple robotic process automation, do that, right? So it's very important that you take these steps where it is needed. And as always, but again, this is real change management. The progress will not be made by the skeptics. The progress will be made by people who want to put their weight behind it, but they will need the support from top management, and they need to be helped by a constant stream of successes, so to speak, so that they can more and more for early adopters become main adopters. And what I said earlier, this democratization is very important. So it's very important that the early users are not not even necessarily the data scientists who are doing everything, right? You need the user who come up with new ideas to innovate. So it really needs to be a multidisciplinary effect, and we see that actually happening. The example that I gave on the price forecasting earlier, the reason we could do that is that we brought together the people who knew how to code software and train models, the people who knew how to manage large amounts of data, the data scientists, the people who understand the industry, and the people who understand how prices are being set in an industry and how you do price forecasting, right? So this is really,
Yeah.
we didn't know before and where we could get up, but this multidisciplinary collaboration and bringing together different pieces of experience and expertise is where the magic happens. And you're looking for a platform that brings this together, right? Where people are actually, if we can do this, maybe we can do that. It's that discussion that you need to get for new ideas. But then, of course, there are also many, and we described that in the report, many use cases which are they're well described. So meaning you
Kind
don't
of the
need
low-hanging fruit in
deviation.
some sense.
Sorry?
It's kind of the low-hanging fruit in terms of
Low-hanging fruit, yes. Yeah.
innovation. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, as you probably have seen, we have mapped out close to 1,000 use cases just in innovation, and these are real. I mean, we've used our own AI, especially developed toolbox, but it's all manually curated, right? So they're real, they're no hallucinated, and they are discrete. So of course, sometimes they're quite similar, but they are discrete, and that means that and this is just an innovation. And this is, by the way, based on an ecosystem of, I think it's now at more than 7,000 vendors, solution vendors.
That's kind of a map of the solution space and so on.
Yeah. So, the 1,000 use cases and more than 7,000 vendors, these are large numbers. You can dismiss that. But the point is, even today, the ecosystem is quite mature and of course, highly dynamic. And the realization that we had is if there is a common need to deploy these things, and you see these companies are out there and they have clients, most often they have revenues. So someone is paying for something, and the chance that you as an organization have a problem that is so unique that nobody has it, it can happen, right? 5%, but in 95% of the cases, someone is doing it already. So then the question does not become, let's think about what to do with AI. The problem of the approach to take is, what do we want to do with AI? So how do we make our people into perfect innovators? And this is the approach that we took. So if you are a product engineer, how can you make you into a perfect product engineer and look out for all the solutions that are out there?
So this brings me to one of the observations that I often see. If you kind of look at the largest knowledge and innovation intensive organizations in the world, if you look at maybe the 1,000 largest ones, almost all of them are building their own internal technology stack. So there seems to be this sense of everybody believes they're very unique and only can solve this kind of uh, solution, create these kind of solutions internally. And it seems that a lot of them are reinventing the wheel.
Yeah.
Of course, there's also very standardized solutions like Microsoft Copilot. So how do you see this solution landscape and the technology vendors and the technology stacks that people are developing with their generative AI teams in companies?
Yeah, I don't have a complete picture, but I believe that, let's say, the bottom of the stack, so to speak, there's still quite a lot of commonality. And I think many R&D leaders, for instance, are not traditionally data scientists, right? So they will use whatever their IT suggests, and if they have any opinion, they will choose what they read about and hear people talk about. So there's lots of Copilot out there, lots of OpenAI stuff. All the large language models, the most popular ones are also very often used in industry. There is, of course, when you apply to innovation, there's big concerns about data security and IP and all of that. So that then immediately gives rise to the divergence. People are trying to find solutions for that, and then you have divergence. So as you go a little bit higher in the stack, so to speak, you see more divergence. Our point of view, which is not unique to us, is, as they say, buy for parity, build for advantage. Meaning, so for those domains where you need to be at par, you need to achieve parity with others, you need to apply best practices, buy off the shelf, don't invent anything, just buy what you have today. But where you want advantage, where you believe this is where we are ultimately going to differentiate, this here's where it's more than a tool, it's becoming a capability. There you probably need to build. And build
Yeah.
means not doing it yourself if you're not a software company, but partner with others and start
Yeah.
to plot your
So
own.
let's say if you're a pharma company um, coming up with candidates for new drug compounds is probably your core capability. So
Yeah,
you want to have a unique advantage there. But let's say in digesting the research literature, that's not where you're going to get any advantage.
exactly, exactly. So we're using also my colleagues who work in for pharma companies, they work a lot using AI in what's called, for instance, as an example, called clinical trial acceleration, right? So pharma companies need to go through clinical trials. It's a massive resource request, a massive exposure for these clients. And this is something where what's probably a mix between buying for parity. So many of these clinical trial projects are quite similar. So I think people can use off-the-shelf approaches. And then where it becomes more specific. So for instance, we've worked for companies who are specializing in rare diseases. So that means that you need to, with clinical trials, of course, you need to have the right patient group, patient age cohorts, and so on, and it becomes more difficult. So there you have certain specific requirements, and it will pay off to have specialized approach and to, let's say, to build for advantage, so to speak. Right. So there's an example of a lot of what you need to do is common, and if you want to focus your resources, let's stick to best practice where you can, and build next practice, so to speak, for yourself, where this is where you see the must-win battles in terms of competition.
Thanks. So I think we're already heading into the recommendations part of your work and of the report. So I think in the moving innovation forward report, you advocate for a number of principles that you have discovered in successfully deploying AI in development and engineering. And you kind of summarize this under the title Network Lab of the Future. Can you
Yeah.
describe what are sort of these practical implications of these principles?
Yeah, yeah, indeed. So what we see, and I think I mentioned already one of these components of this network lab of the future, which is this democratized AI democratization. So not for the few, but for the many. And in fact, you see that it
Make it
also,
available very broadly in the
yes, within
organization.
the company, but you'll see it in company. We are now in an era where it's not AI is not just for the very largest ones who can afford to train their own models, right? There is an AI for anywhere, and it's important because all companies are part of an ecosystem, and it's important that you can work with suppliers and customers and others that have this all a similar, let's say, AI maturity. So democratization is important, and this means within a company that you need to strive for many of these use cases for mass adoption, right? Not a few, but many. And this is the whole change management topic that I mentioned earlier. The second part is also, rather than saying, let's use AI to be better and faster and smarter and cheaper in doing things as we've always done them, let's also think about new ways of innovating, right? Where if you have, it's a natural next step. And the way to do that is what we call ambidexterity, two-handedness, is that if you expect AI to do wonderful breakthrough things, that you probably need to have the right balance between applications that have to do with productivity, and let's say exploitation. So what I just said, better, faster, cheaper, predictable, but
Mm.
also to make sure that you have enough that has to do with more exploration, to go into new domains, to use AI for things that you could not do before. So the right balance between those two, for instance, people's incentives and the way you steer for growth is going to be very important. The third one is around data, of course. No data, no AI. And that has a big technology component, but it also has a very much of a collaborative, interpersonal. So sharing data between companies, making sure it's interoperable, it requires a lot of collaboration that is not in many organizations happening, let alone between organizations and ecosystems. So that's the third.
Fortunately, interoperability has become a lot easier with the sort of general foundational models, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. But you see, that's why at the end of the day, and so often, it's probably not the technology that is holding back, but still people, I mean, in many companies are not able to use the data that they would like to have, and that very often has to do with things like trust or things like IP or things like risks or things like conceived misalignment of interest and things like that. So that's a very important. And the last one, which we call enablement, this has to do with if you want to do all this, if you want to go for mass adoption. So this will not be a dozen people who are using something, but hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of people. If you want them to also work with data in new ways and so on, that means that you need to make sure that the technology stack that we use, including things like data governance, is in sync with that. And it's important to make that part of the design in the beginning. You will not know exactly where you end up, but I'm 100% certain you will need to rethink data governance. What is an employee able to share? What kind of data to use? So it will anyhow come up, and it's better to bring that into to make IT part of the discussion and the journey from the start. So those are the four things: AI democratization, new ways of working, which we call ambidexterity, data collaboration, and enablement, technology enablement.
Right, and that enablement brings us back to the beginning because that's really complex, right? And that's where maybe the snake bites in its own tail, and maybe we need AI to actually help us solve this on a more systematic and broader level.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And so a lot of people, of course, rightfully so, also have concerns about the impact of AI on their jobs, right? It's not um, only seen as positive.
No.
People worry about the meaning of their job and the financial security that their job brings. So, what's your view on that? What is your like forecast or vision of even though we're speaking about augmentation and building powerful tools for people, what do you think in, let's say, the next 12 to 24 months we will see in terms of labor market impact?
Yeah, if I at least the industries and the companies that I know, specifically in the Netherlands, I think we have a shortage of people, right?
Yeah.
So will
So
be
AI is replacing the people that we don't have.
yeah, or making people so much more productive that they can do a lot more than they otherwise could do. So in the Netherlands, I really think we are very far away from actually displacing people. I don't see that happening. In other parts of the world, maybe it does. In specifically innovation and research and development engineering, I really don't see that happening. What you do see that, for instance, there are all kinds of studies out there to see who benefits most from things like large language models. In some domains, it seems that the more junior people or less qualified people take advantage most because they can suddenly see, information that senior guys already have, and they can also have it. In others, it seems to be that you need lots of experience to be critical enough to be able to interpret the results of the AI. So it will depend a bit on where exactly you are, but generally speaking, I believe that many of the applications can do things that otherwise would be done by junior staff, so a junior scientist, for instance, or a junior engineer. And we see that, by the way, also we as ADL, we're also a knowledge-intensive sector, and we see that also happening. There are still plenty to do for these juniors, but their role will be different. And so what you need to rethink is what is now the career path in engineering, in project management as a scientist? what do you let young people do so that they can be productive from day one and get the right experience that you need for things like critical thinking and working with these AI at more advanced levels. So I think it's more of a rethinking question than people replacing people. And I said for in the Netherlands, there's so much shortage in these type of people that I see the risk of people losing their jobs. I'm limiting myself to innovation as rather low, actually.
All right, thanks for sharing that. And so final chapter. So Arthur D. Little, you're looking at this kind of on a industry-wide and strategic level. Another critical factor in this equation is the role of governments,
Yeah.
right? So it's clear that there are some concerns that you mentioned the Draghi report about our innovative capabilities in AI in Europe, for example. So what would you recommend to policymakers? What do you see as the role to lead us in the right way here, both on the national and on the European level?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and I don't have the answer to that, and it's quite difficult. A couple of ways to answer this, and it's not going to be very original, but one is to stay away from unnecessary regulation. I'm not pleading against regulation. I'm very much pro-regulation, but not everything is necessary, especially when it comes to AI. I think we need to be careful there. I'm fully aligned with what the European Commission is trying to do in managing this, but it's easy to overshoot, so to speak.
So
Second,
where would be maybe some, let's say, some accents, some additions to that you would recommend in terms of accelerating our capabilities in the direction that you sketch in the report?
yeah, so well, one very important element where governments can have a role is there will be lots of innovation in how to innovate better with AI, if you see what I mean. And that innovation will come, as always, to a large extent from smaller companies and even startups. I mentioned this number of more than 7,000 vendors. As you can imagine, thousands of these are actually quite small companies. And we still need to do more work in analyzing this ecosystem, but around 30% of those are European. That means it's quite a lot, actually. And so ways to make sure that these startups find their way to their customers, which are probably larger companies, innovation-intensive companies, and make sure that they can work, that they can to improve the let's say the business environment for startups to prosper, to make sure that they can get access to finance. All these things which have nothing to do with AI, I think are very important. And the need is also there. We mentioned Draghi earlier. The European Union is going to invest, I think, 200 billion in AI. I'm not sure what that means, AI, but it's very crucial that we have the right infrastructure, that we remain sovereignty, that we do not suddenly become closed out of foundational models or cloud infrastructure. All these things are typical roles for a government that are, of course, are quite essential. And I believe the moment really is now. If productivity is maybe the most important thing for European companies today, and innovation is the way to raise productivity, and AI is so well suited to increase productivity of innovation, then it should not be difficult to connect the dots, so to speak. And there's certainly a role for government, but even more so, there's a role for businesses to make this happen.
All right, thanks. I think that's a great note to close the interview on. And um, so I want to thank you for making the time and
Pleasure.
joining us for this interview with Michael Kolk from Arthur D. Little on trends in AI. You can follow us on YouTube and the other social channels that we are on, and stay tuned for the next episode in this series. Thank you, Michael.